Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who apologizes if you're not yet connected with him on LinkedIn, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to Sports Geek. This is episode 313. On this week's episode, I chat with Dustin Lockett from the FIBA Women's World Basketball Championship. But before I do so, thank you very much for listening. You might be listening to Sports Geek on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google or my favorite podcast app, Pocket Casts. Unfortunately, we haven't done enough episodes this year to feature in anyone's Spotify or podcast Pocket Cast Wrapped. But I do appreciate that you have been listening and appreciate the feedback of the first couple of episodes that we've had since the reboot. As always, you can always listen to the podcast at sportsgeekhq.com and you can contact me via social media at Sean Callanan or the old-fashioned way, email Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Before I get in this episode with Dustin, just a quick reminder: if anyone is a Collingwood supporter like myself, I'm running for the Collingwood board. I'm a big believer that boards, especially for sporting organisations, require more digital expertise and will further future-proof their organisations by having people with digital knowledge on the boards. I do a lot of work helping digital departments and digital folk pitch to boards for new initiatives. I'm really passionate about the Collingwood Football Club. Lucky enough to be a member for over 20 years. My great-grandfather played for Collingwood. It's in my blood. Didn't get a choice. Quite happy with it. So if you know someone that is a Collingwood member that has the ability to vote, I'm a believer that every member should be able to vote. At the moment, it's only certain categories. But if you know someone, tell them to. I would really appreciate your recommendation. Votes close on December 9, and I'll find out if I've been successful in my campaign. Again, been an interesting process. Before I get into my chat with Dustin, just a quick shout out. I had a couple of the sessions in the last 2 weeks actually. Pick My Brain sessions. I really love them. They give you the ability. You set the agenda. It's very easy to book one. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain. Swipe your credit card, book in for 2 hours. It can be a one-on-one mentoring session with one of your staff. It can be a group session with your team, tackling a particular issue. We can dive in on one bit of content or one platform, or we can just talk about the issues that you're facing and seeing how I can solve them. My goal is to give you as many ideas, and as previous people have been in sessions with me, you might leave with a little bit of a sore head because I throw a lot of ideas and a lot of concepts, but that's the idea. So they're really good from a staff development point of view in that sense as well. So, I'd love to hear from all podcast listeners to say, hey, I listen to the podcast, so I'd love to have a chat. That's exactly what the Pick My Brain sessions are for. Now, getting into my chat with Dustin Lockett, lucky enough to be working with him over the past couple of years on the Women's World Cup here in Sydney. So I hope you enjoy my chat recapping that tournament and the journey up towards the tournament with Dustin Lockett. Very happy to welcome Dustin Lockett. He was the General Manager of Commercial for the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup 2022, hosted here in Sydney, recently completed, very successful. Welcome to the podcast, Dustin.
Hey, Sean. Thank you. Thanks for having me, mate.
No worries. I am actually repping, for those who are watching on YouTube, repping the World Cup top that I got sent in the mail. So thank you very much. It's my small part being on the commercial committee, but we'll talk a little bit about the World Cup and its success a little bit later. I want to first of all ask you, how did you get your start in the world of sport and the sports industry?
Sure. Yeah, look, it's something I always wanted to do, Sean. Goes back to my education. I did a sports management and marketing degree, and always sort of had in the back of my mind, my graduating seminar was actually on IMG and Mark McCormack. And And then I ended up sort of getting my first career into theme parks and into the entertainment world. And I was there until 2004 at Wonderland Sydney, where I was the director of sales and marketing. And when that park was sold off for business park land, I thought, now what am I going to do? And I actually sent an email sort of on spec to IMG here in Sydney. And I was lucky enough to get a response and ultimately a role by a fantastic mentor of mine, Phil Stoneman, who I actually used to compete against on the beach as a beach sprinter. So it's funny how the world works, that we were sort of brought together by a common interest.
So those early roles early at IMG, I guess learning the craft from a sales marketing point of view, and then you sort of found yourself moving into the world of events. Early on working with the Krusty Demons and a few others. Was there something in particular that sort of drove you to the event space?
Yeah, I mean, I always loved the event space, but it's sort of my background, as you pointed out, was really in the sales side of the business and selling sponsorship with IMG for about 5 years. I was based back up on the Gold Coast working on the Indy Carnival, which was I think it was the largest event behind the Australian Open Tennis and the Spring Racing Carnival at the time. But my wife wanted to come back to Sydney, so an ex-IMG colleague was running and had started up the Krusty Demons, and it was really just a nice segue to come back into Sydney. I had no interest in freestyle motocross, but the same skills applied from a sales and marketing and selling sponsorship. I was in charge of commercial, it was my first sort of foray into marketing and promoting per se, and it was definitely an eye opener, Sean, working on freestyle motocross. That's for sure.
Definitely. That's, again, in the 2008 range. But one of the things that I was, when I was looking back at your career overall, was the role you had with Fremantle Media. People know Fremantle Media as, this TV powerhouse behind franchises like MasterChef. But your role there wasn't on the TV side. It was still in that event and live experience side. What was your role and what was your remit when working with Fremantle?
Yeah, good question, Sean. I just got an email on spec via LinkedIn, as we often do, and the gentleman there sort of said, "Would you like to come in and have a chat?" And you've got a lot of experience in running events. We're wanting to set up a live events division to really leverage our IP with such brands as MasterChef, Grand Designs, X Factor. They were obviously doing a lot of the shows for Psycho and Simon Cowell. And I guess my role really wasn't any different from a sales point of view. My role was to go out and find event producers and convince them that these brands would be fantastic in the live event space. And luckily enough, I was able to do that. We launched MasterChef Live into Australia at its absolute peak, which was mind-boggling. If you recall the ratings back in those days for MasterChef, we again made that into a live event experience. Did the same for Grand Designs, and then moved into theatre, and we created QI Live, of all things, with Stephen Fry. It was really, really interesting. And I get back to your earlier question, Sean, around sort of moving from sports to entertainment. It was probably that role that got me really interested and excited about the prospect of IP, but also I guess the promoting space, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and you, I like using the phrase "steal with pride" on my podcast, and looking at different industries and how sport and how entertainment can adapt different things. And when you look at a beast that is Fremantle Media, like sponsorship integration, branded content, they were really on the early, in the forefront of that in, integrating all of their partners into the show. And I'm assuming that also then extended, you were bringing those partners into that live experience so they could have actually meet the viewers, connect with the viewers, activate with the viewers. Was that a key part of the live experience with the Fremantle properties?
Yeah, absolutely. We had the phrase, it was the wheel of value. So you had the IP in the middle,
Yep.
whether it's X Factor or Got Talent or MasterChef is a really good example. And how do we light up as many of those wheels around it? From licensing to brand integration, and ultimately where I came in was sort of that live experience where people could see, the brand integration on TV and sort of Coles was a great example, and then on TV and in the pantry, so on the show. But then how do fans get up close and personal with the brand? And ultimately, Fremantle, as you said, was kind of ahead of its time from a production and IP owner to think actually we can light up as many wheels as possible, but give fans that up close and personal experience. And that was my job, as you said, to create a live events division off all the IP that we had access to.
And how much of it was, again, like a lot of sponsorship early is brand recognition and getting your name out there. But like with I'm still interested in the MasterChef piece. Like, do you see that, other people at Coles saying we really want to push, this type of pasta or this olive oil, and do they see like the movement both from the TV and the live events to seeing those SKUs pop post those events? And is that one of the things that was driving you from a commercial partnership point of view?
And I guess short answer, Sean, is that absolutely the ingredients that we used on the show would fly off the shelf. But that was sort of more the brand partnerships team that would work with the production team.
Yep.
To help bring that to life off the back of the recipes. But again, people that want to see the show on TV do want to interact with the brand in a live environment. And again, that's where I came in and really then integrating brands that were associated with the show into the live environment. Of course, Coles was a big part of that experience.
And so then going from a really brand-friendly IP and product, like in that wheel you're talking about with MasterChef, it's really easy to a certain extent to integrate groceries and the different products to moving to more, I guess, traditional TV and fiction. Like you also worked for BBC Studios and the BBC IP and franchises like Doctor Who. How is that different? Because it's not like you can put a tin of tomatoes in a Doctor Who episode in an event. Like how was the sponsorship offer, and I guess how was that different moving to a role with BBC?
Yeah, again, you're right. Very different from a product placement point of view. But so where we had control of the brands here locally to leverage the IP, that's where we really focused. And I was in charge of licensing, consumer products, home entertainment, digital, and of course live entertainment. So we just tried to focus on the things that we could control. Very difficult, as you said, from a Doctor Who point of view, to be able to do that based in the UK. And we were obviously the local arm. And obviously we did that very successfully. It was in waves. Doctor Who's sort of popularity has sort of waxed and waned due largely to who is the Doctor at the time. Has a huge influence on whether you're going to sell T-shirts and mugs and etc. But look, the same principles apply. How do you light up that wheel? It's less about sort of brand integration into the TV component, but where else can you influence those spheres outside of sort of brand integration internally?
Terrific. And so, the reason we've interacted over the last couple of years has been the Women's World Cup, the FIBA Women's World Cup that was hosted in Sydney. I've been lucky enough to either work with and or speak to people who are in these major events and these local organising committees, which are effectively like a pop-up organisation. It's not like working with IMG or TEG or someone that's got a built-in culture and they're running different events. Like when it's a local organising committee, it's pretty much bring in the best of the best people you can. You've got to quickly build a culture and really get cracking. What was your introduction to the Women's World Cup, and what were your first 90 days like?
Yeah, it's very different, Sean. As you said, I've never worked in that way. I've always worked for sort of large businesses on a permanent sort of basis. So this was my first foray into a local organising committee. And you're absolutely right. It's from startup, and you've got to hit the ground running. The first 90 days, I came on board in January last year. I think I was the second or third appointment behind the CEO, and obviously backtracking Basketball
Yep.
Australia won the rights to the World Cup and decided, well, we need to set up a local organising committee. We can't do it. They created a board and actually a company. Then off the back of the board's appointment, I think the rest of the committees were appointed, which is where you came in and played an important role, Sean. And
Yep.
then the executive team off the back of the CEO was appointed. It was a really small team. Only myself, operations GM, finance and business, and marketing GM. So a very, very small team. The first 90 days was really about creating, there'd obviously been a plan that the CEO and the board had put in place, and obviously the commercial committee interpreting that, putting down a more detail, putting more flesh on the bone in terms of the commercial plan, how are we going to get to the budget, Yep. What are the three pillars, and that's obviously was everything commercial, ticketing, sponsorship and hospitality. So it was really, again, hitting the ground running, building relationships really quickly. Basketball wasn't my sport, so there was a bit of product knowledge that needed to go on and on board very quickly so that I could talk the lingo, so to speak. Little things like kicking off meetings doesn't go down well in a basketball environment, so it's tipping off meetings. So right down to those little nuances that need to happen very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it was, those early days, I got reached out to be part of the commercial committee. So I think it was actually, really lent on the volunteerism around these major events. The board had different people with different remits, and they also got some different committees to help support. But we would get on those calls and discuss different things like ticketing and commercial. But then we, as a commercial committee, we would all step back, and you were the one doing all the groundwork, fleshing out those strategies, starting to tackle some of those big pieces of work, as well as starting to bring different people in that could actually roll out those strategies. Because it was, early on. I must admit, it was a weird time to be planning a major event. We were still in lockdowns, and we didn't know when, if COVID was going to still exist. I think I remember us having discussions of, the stadiums having to be cleaned in between sessions and a full wipe down for COVID requirements and those kind of things. So it definitely came with an extra layer of issues from COVID, and I think there was probably more time spent on the risk register than most major events, I would have thought.
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. It was unprecedented times, as most people that were managing major events over the last couple of years. And again, I've got probably a few more grey hairs than I did 18 months ago, and the nuances of even the ticketing strategy and the modelling of are we going to have crowds? Are we 100%? Are we 50%? So we even did modelling on all those different scenarios, and then right down to sort of the nuances of the ticketing modelling on how the home team might go. Do they make the finals? Do they not make the finals? So it was a difficult time, and no one really knew if and when and how we were going to come out of it. But there was a lot of planning in the background, and risk registers and different scenarios on planning that. Thankfully, we didn't have to use any of them, but we did scenario plan a lot of scenarios. So we felt really, really prepared, which is great.
So early on, like ticketing being a major component of success for the tournament, what was some of the early planning? Is it a bit of working back from the number you have to get to? Was it also juggling like when the major teams were playing and what you expected crowds to be? I mean, you had some sort of pieces sort of locked in where you had the US team playing primarily during the day, so it worked for the US market into their evening, and then you had the Opals, the Australian team, primarily playing at night to anchor your draw, even though the draw hadn't been made, and you were sort of planning without knowing the teams, all of those kind of things. What were some of the, I guess, the key planks to your marketing strategy? And as we like to say, and I was just at Ticketing Professionals Conference recently. It's all about the cheeks and the seats. What were some of the key things that were key to that early planning?
Yeah, it's a good question, Sean. We did have some, as you said, a few things that were locked in. One was an initial budget, but some people do fall into the trap of sort of retrofitting a strategy and a plan to get to that budget, and that's something that I don't do. I like to start from absolute scratch and go, okay, right, well, based on all our research that we did, how many people do we think are going to come to this event based on a couple of different scenarios? And we did a lot of research. We worked closely with Ticketek in terms of, okay, well, this is a bit different. It's a World Cup. How does this compare to the Netball World Cup? How does this compare to other World Cups? And obviously the Women's T20 was a recent example of that as well. But it was really interesting, Sean, around when you go on sale, what percentage of tickets, if you do your strategy right and you engage the local, in this case, basketball community, how many tickets do you think you'll sell of your projected budget up front? How long are you on sale for? What does the month leading up to the event look like? And indeed, what does the tournament look like? And we modelled that based on a bit of research that we did, and in the wash-up, we were actually really, really close in terms of our modelling on sale. We did about 10% of our tickets on sale up front in the first sort of pre-sale window and GP on sale. And then indeed, through the events, we sold about 45% of our tickets during the event, which, as you can imagine, is quite nail-biting. But we did a really good job in terms of sort of managing the board that, we've got to hold on to our seats here. We've got to hold our nerve. We're not discounting. We've got to trust the plan. We've got to trust the marketing plan. And obviously I worked really closely with the GM of marketing to make sure that, the general public was aware, but obviously the basketball community. And thankfully we did hit all those KPIs and we exceeded all our targets.
One of the things I do remember, there was the conversation of even the idea of day passes and people buying a ticket to go to all the games for a day or a whole session.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit of the, coming from FIBA saying, oh, this is how we've always done it. Oh, this is what we expect. And it was a really vigorous debate with the commercial committee to say, well, is that how customers and fans want it now? Do they want to go to both games? And that debate, was one that was, robustly discussed. But then you were the one that had to, get that signed off and push that through. Were you, happy with some of those outcomes?
Yeah, I think the ticketing strategy did have a few iterations. I started it without a ticketing manager in place. We did have a consultant on board to start with, which gave us a little bit of insight in how these types of events work. But we did start with whole day, 10-day pass, follow your team, and various other sort of applications, and even family passes always comes up, as you probably know. And as we started to sort of let the dust settle, we felt there was too many, and again, sort of taking feedback on board from everybody. As you do, it's a very consultative process rather than it's just our way or the highway. But we did decide to sort of strip it right back, and we had two venues, as you probably remember. One was a much smaller venue, and the other one was obviously the Sydney Superdome, or otherwise Kudos Bank Arena, 16,000 seat arena. So we had to kind of treat them very differently, but we sort of decided to strip it back, give people sort of less options. If you give people too many options, it is very difficult to then manage on the go, just from a back-end ticketing system point of view. So we ended up with a range of different categories, from bronze to platinum, and indeed courtside seats, and only a day pass during the group phase for the Superdome.
Yep.
And then we also decided to make the Key Centre or the Sports Centre a one flat, so not a GA, but you were able to get a seat where you wanted, where you chose, but it was a flat ticket price of $30 and $15 throughout the group phase. And again, big part of our pillar was to make it accessible.
And I think that's what it was, and it was, you wanted to have wide appeal. You wanted, kids from local basketball associations to be able to have access. So I thought I found that whole debate and the conversations around it interesting, knowing that you and Taran, from a ticketing point of view, had to go and roll it out and chase down those ticket buyers. One thing that definitely helped, and I do remember joking on some of the commercial calls, can't we just make Lauren Jackson come back? That would be great. And then it actually, and we all joked about it and said it would be great. And then then the story, then the story happened. She started playing again. She was put on the squad, and then to put up the performances she did. I mean, how much of that was a fillip and a momentum builder, and just the overall both PR and the opportunity to see one of the greatest of all time go around one more time, and to do what she did. How much of that was an amazing just story for the tournament overall?
Yeah, it was amazing, Sean, and obviously quite serendipitous. And I remember when Lauren was an ambassador of the tournament. When we launched the event way back in May last year, we had a birthday cake for her 40th birthday, and she was a fantastic ambassador.
Yep.
And we thought, how great's that, having Lauren Jackson as an ambassador for the event to generate some PR. And absolutely, who would have thought in May last year that Lauren would come back and go through the process and tick every box along the way from all reports, to then obviously make the squad, make the team, and even go through the tournament, and then in the bronze medal game shoot an MVP performance of 30 points to help the team win a bronze medal. It was quite the fairy tale. Obviously, it did give us a fantastic talking point, great PR, and no doubt impacting on ticket sales, especially to the basketball community, to go and see Lauren for one more time. I think she'd been retired for 10 years at that point, which is just it's unbelievable to think that she got herself back.
And the tournament itself, what was it like? Again, 2 years of work practically to get to the stadium or to get to the tournament, and you're getting to the pointy end of the tournament, and by and large, other than treating some VIPs, like your job is done, and you got to potentially enjoy the tournament a little bit, take in some of the games. What was the tournament itself like from your point of view, to sort of see a culmination of the work that you and everyone in local organising committee was able to pull off?
Yeah, it was. I'd like to say my job was done leading up to the event, Sean, but not quite. Given the team was quite a lean team, so obviously leading by example and doing all the little things that I would expect the team to do. So I think one day I did about 40,000 steps walking between venues. So it was a busy 10 days, but we're still riding the roller coaster, Sean, in terms of getting to our overall budgets and targets. And I was constantly doing daily, twice daily reports on how we were tracking, how we're selling, what's our average ticket price. So it was still quite nail biting, and it was on a game by game basis on how things were going to go. And so the Opals not winning that first game it gave us a little bit of tension. we were sort of playing a little bit of catch up after that sort of first game. But these tournaments, you need a little bit of luck, and thankfully, the chips fell our way in terms of results, which stimulated crowds. Obviously, the Opals sort of making the final, just missing out on the gold medal game, but China going through was sort of a cruel blessing, so to speak, because tickets just then went through the roof. It was crazy.
Yep.
Our biggest selling day was the Friday after the semi-final day. People were just waiting for the very last minute, but it was great to sort of really sort of working with the team, support the team, to see all their hard work come to life as well, which was amazing across ticketing and hospitality and our partnerships as well. So it was exhausting, not going to lie. It was not only the 10 days of the tournament, but sort of the week or two leading up. It was grueling, but rewarding.
Yes, and I didn't mean to diminish the work that you were doing at the tournament. Completely understand that there is a lot to do during the tournament. But what I was trying to get to was, and a lot of people, have lucky enough to work with clients around big events, and sometimes the busyness and the stress of all the things, you don't actually get to stop and smell the roses a little bit to sort of realize, hey, this is why I love working in sport. I'm at this massive event.
Yeah.
Was there a moment? And it might have been a 30-second moment. It might have been a minute where you just took a breath and went, wow. Was there a moment for the tournament for you that you did sort of just have a bit of, the mind ease and a bit of gratefulness around what the tournament was?
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. And you hit the nail on the head that, I used to say when I was at IMG and I'd talk to recruits coming in, and I go, if you think this is all going to be, fantastic, and it's not. It's 98% hard work, and then you do get to, when I worked on Indy, it was sort of at 3:00 you go up to the government suite and watch the last one or two laps of the Indy race or the V8 race, and you go, yeah, this is pretty cool. And I guess that moment for me would have been at the World Cup, and I did really make a point of saying to my team, and some were quite, I wouldn't say green, but less experienced, and say, listen, you need to take some time to really reflect on what a great result this is, and really push them to do that. And for me, it was probably, in the last quarter of the gold medal match, obviously the Opals had claimed their bronze, USA v China, nearly a packed house. We knew that the tournament had already surpassed previous World Cups attendances, which really just blew us away, to say that, wow, we've actually created the most successful FIBA Women's World Cup. So this is great. And so for me, it was probably the last 5 minutes of that gold medal game, and packed house. It was amazing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It is really something that, I'm the same. Whether it's working with someone who is working a big event, it's like you've just got to stop and take a pause every now and again to realize, the luck, that you are lucky to be involved in an event like that, and your contribution, whether it be big or small, to make that happen. In the wrap up, like one of the things you would have done post event is a bunch of reports and a bunch of reporting for the local organising committee to go back to partners, to go back to key stakeholders like FIBA and the New South Wales government and the like. But what were some of the key lessons and learnings for you from the FIBA Women's World Cup?
Look, I think there wasn't too much wrong or things that I would change, to be honest. The ticketing was a big part. Probably trying to coordinate some visibility of the draw in advance, so that we actually, had a bit more insight into that. But we had to wait until the very last minute for the draw. Then we only sort of had a 10-day window to sort of finesse that strategy. A bit more time between that would be great. Sponsorship obviously was very tough this year. As I mentioned, we're in a perfect storm of companies consolidating or brands consolidating partnerships they had. We had no control over obviously the broadcast deal, which you're aware of, Sean. So, FIBA Media did a great job, but we didn't have any visibility of where that was going to land ultimately on ESPN until really late in the piece. So that made our discussions with partners very challenging. So a deal locked and loaded before we go to market would be amazing, because as you know, that's the first question that partners ask is where's it going to be and how many people can I possibly engage with at the event are usually the two key questions. So we could guesstimate how many people would come through, but we couldn't hand on heart say, well, this is where it's going to be, because we just didn't know. We're at the behest of FIBA Media.
It is a tough one for events where you haven't got, you're not like footy or cricket or tennis where you can point back to last year's tournament or whatever. You're providing modelling around, hey, this is what we propose and this is what we hope. So it's a bit more of a leap of faith from a commercial point of view, and it's sort of it does make that even tougher in a tough market that there currently is.
Yeah. But we, as you know, we did look at the commercial sort of revenue as a bucket, and that included ticketing, sponsorship, and hospitality. And so we did very much look at it that way. We would have liked to have got sort of more revenue out of sponsorship, but we more than made up for that in a really solid ticketing strategy and a marketing plan that brought all that to life, which was great. So we weren't behind the eight ball at the end of the tournament, which was great.
One last thing I wanted to ask you: the stall gift is on your LinkedIn. Why is that? What is your role at the stall gift? And also for my international listeners, you might want to tell them what the stall gift is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, Sean, I've got a long history with the stall gift as a former competitor. I ran at Stall, which is the longest running professional foot race carnival in a little country town, about 2.5, 3 hours from the heart of Melbourne. It's a professional foot race, handicapped running, and the main race is called the Stall Gift, and that's run over 120 metres. Luckily enough, I was lucky to run at the event, so it's quite close to my heart. I didn't win it, unfortunately. I did make the final way back in 1997, so I'm quite passionate about it. The Victorian State Government pulled together a board called the Stall Gift Event Management Board, and I was luckily enough appointed as an independent director to help to sort of bring some extra sort of skills to the Stall Athletic Club. It's celebrated its 140th running last Easter. Next year will be 141.
Yep.
I've actually just stood down from the board, so I must update my LinkedIn profile. Thanks for reminding me there, Sean. But I loved every minute of it. Putting back into a sport that I love my athletics. Just really love sort of putting back into it and bringing a few things. We renegotiated the deal with Channel 7. It's on before the blockbuster Cats Hawthorn game on Easter Monday. We brought in digital ticketing for the first time last year, heap of new sponsors, whole bunch of stuff to hopefully secure the Stall Gift's sort of immediate future over the next few years, which is great.
It is a unique event. It's uniquely Australian. It's one with a long history and a lot of heritage in the world of athletics. And it's sort of now starting to find its way, into what does it look like, going forward. Part of it is continuing its media partnership with Channel 7, but also the festival around it and the trek that a lot of people from the world of athletics make to Stall every year. It's amazing. As someone who lived in regional Victoria and lived close to Stall for a while there, it's a big part there. But the fact that also the best of the world from a racing point of from a running point of view end up there, and some famous names have run there at Stall over the years. So that leaves me, Dustin, with my Sports Geek closing five. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
I do. Nice segue, Sean. As I've alluded to, I do love my athletics. So my first event as a proud Queenslander growing up on the Gold Coast, there was a little event called the 1982 Commonwealth Games. So I was lucky enough to witness Raylene Boyle win the 400 metres at the Com Games, 1982.
Oh, terrific moment. I remember watching that, and I remember how many of those commemorative 50-cent pieces that I was collecting at some stage. Then eventually I raided that collective bank when I was a uni student, and I needed a slab of beer. So I had them at one stage, but I do remember the 82 Commonwealth Games quite fondly. You would have been to a lot of sports events and a lot of events in your time. Do you have a favourite food memory or a go-to food when you're at a sports event?
Yeah, look, whether I'm in corporate hospitality or out in the freezing cold at the MCG watching the mighty Cats, it has to be a hot pie with tomato sauce, Sean.
Terrific. I should be getting a sponsorship from 420 any time now, the amount of times pies get mentioned. What's the first app you open in the morning? Maybe what was the first app you're opening in the morning during the FIBA Women's World Cup?
Probably like most people, I'm still in bed. I'm opening up my emails, as I probably shouldn't, but certainly the FIBA app and the Ultimate Fan app for the World Cup was a go-to, and then probably news apps after that. Terrific.
Is there someone that the Sports Geek podcast listeners should follow? Maybe it's an author you read, or a podcaster, or maybe a colleague that's doing great things on LinkedIn.
I've just finished this book here by David Goggins. Can't Hurt Me. If you're after a inspirational story by a guy called David Goggins, that is one I would highly recommend. Very motivational, overcoming adversity. Fantastic. It's obviously it's an ebook as well, which is great. But yeah, try and look him up. Fantastic.
Definitely. And lastly, what social media platform is your MVP? And potentially, what was the one that worked the best in helping promote the Women's World Cup?
Look, for me personally, it's probably Instagram. I've got a young family, so like any other parents, take way too many photos that never see the light of day. So I do publish the odd one on Instagram, and I just like the memories that come up, which is great. Not like how we used to do it back in the old days with a photo. But from a professional point of view, Instagram and Facebook, depending on the target audience, of course, but certainly Insta and Facebook did help us sell tickets, that's for sure.
Definitely. Well, Dustin, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Good to catch up with you. Hopefully we will catch up for a beer, maybe at a Pies Cats game in the new year. Where's the best place on the internet for people to reach out to you and say, hey, I listened to the episode, Dustin, really appreciate it. What are the best platforms to reach out and say hello?
Probably just LinkedIn, Sean. You can find me there and drop me a note there. No problems.
I will put the links in the show notes. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Additionally, really enjoyed working with you as part of the commercial committee for the World Cup. And thanks a lot.
Yeah, likewise, Sean. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to blockbuster Cats Pies game next year.
Why not book a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan? Go to sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain.
Thanks again to Dustin Lockett. Please check out the show notes. That will be the episode number 313. sportsgeekhq.com/313. I will have links to Dustin's LinkedIn profile in the show notes. I wanted to share some of the key stats. Melissa King, the CEO, said them through after we did this episode. Highest attendance in the history of the competition, 145,000 people. Sold out sessions, followed by the China-USA game. The the ticket sales exceeding all the targets. So again, congratulations to Dustin and his team. Importantly, and it'll be important especially for a future episode, delivered a carbon neutral event, achieving our ambition to be most sustainable FIBA Women's World Cup since inception. Smash broadcast, digital, social, print records. Broadcast audience of over 210 million people. Five-fold increase in social media from 2018. 190% increase in the Australian audience. 1.1 billion social media impressions. 5 times greater than 2018. So, again, congrats to the crew. Congrats to all the volunteers. Congrats to the committees, especially my commercial committee that I work with over a couple of years in the lead up to the tournament. Really do appreciate it. And it leads me to the question of the podcast, and I'd love your feedback. As I said, send me an email, Sean@sportsgeekhq.com, or send me a tweet at Sean Callanan. What do you want to see from major events in the future? What innovations, what changes? What do you want to see? Where do you think major events are going? Be interested to know more. A couple of things before I wrap up. Again, I want to just talk a little bit about digital to dollars, how it can work for you and how it can work for your team. It works to figure out and help you figure out the proper objective for what you're trying to do from your digital channels. Are you trying to tackle fan growth? Are you trying to develop new fans? Are you trying to lift digital engagement? What does that mean? And then how do you explain that to your board? Back to my point about getting more digital expertise on your board. How can your digital deliver for your sponsors? Okay, and that one is definitely one that drives more revenue from digital. How can you tie that? So that's what digital to dollars does. That's the overall objective of it. The way we go about it is across the pillars that we've set up and that we've developed over the years. Know your audience. Who are you trying to talk to? Who are the different personas? Who are the different people you're trying to talk to? Know your content. What are your ideas? Why are you doing it? Who are you doing it for? And then where are you going to put it? Know your distribution. What channels are going to work? Is that content that's going to work on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, on YouTube, and understanding where the best distribution platform is. And we might be talking about your social media channels, or you might be talking about your own channels. How should you be tackling email? Should you be developing something that sits in the text and chat space? That's what the distribution piece is. In some cases, we look at the Know Your Destination pillar, which is looking at your website, the user journey, how your customers, your fans, get greeted by your website or your app. Again, you're doing all this work on social. Where are you sending them? Are you sending them to the website? Are you sending them to the app? And then if you are commercially minded or have commercial folk that are still trying to figure out the pieces of digital, that's where the last 2 pillars come in. Know your value, trying to understand, set, and develop a rate card for what you're trying to do in the social space and digital space. And then know your pitch. How can you take all of that information that you've got, the knowledge of your audience, the knowledge of what content works, the knowledge of how you tackle different platforms, as well as the rate card and the commercial piece too, wrap it all up in a nice bow and deliver for your partners. So that's the digital dollars process. I'm really enjoying working on it with a few different clients at the moment. It is a longer haul. It's not something that I can come in and do a day workshop and say, hey, here it's all working. That's really just the start. That's really just the starting point. If you're interested, check it out, digitaltodollars.com. I've got links to the podcast where I dive into in a bit more detail on the different pillars. But as always, you can send me an email at Sean@sportsgeekhq.com. I think the last thing, last week, I was recently up in Gold Coast of Australia, nice warm part of Australia, especially with Melbourne deciding to not even get close to starting summer. It's been rather cold spring, but lucky enough to be up there for the NFL Australia Flag Football Tournament. It was real fun to have 10 schools vying for a spot at the Pro Bowl games, and we had former All-Pro running back Todd Gurley come down, and also some of the international pathway players that have recently been announced. So 2 Kiwis two Aussies and a Kiwi, I should say, that have been announced and starting their NFL journey. So it's good to be back working events, covering it from a social point of view, capturing all the content. and looking forward to sharing more of that out with the work that we're doing in NFL Australia. And it really brings me, I wanted to mention it because it really brings me into that piece of participation and how much participation is important to fan development. I've no doubt those kids are all in grade 5, playing a bit of flag football, has piqued their interest in the NFL. They're probably getting up early on a Monday morning here in Australia to watch some of the games, and they'll most likely pick a team, and it might be the team that they were representing on the day, with both the Rams and the Eagles having rights in this market. So if you're interested in that topic, you should check out my chat with Dino DiPierdomenico back in episode 255. That's where he talked about the importance of those those participation programs to develop a really strong tie to the sport, and the studies that he talked about of when you start playing a sport at a young age, you become a fan of that sport for much, much longer. And I can attest to that, having played basketball from a young age. I played AFL at a young age, didn't continue playing AFL, but I am still playing basketball. So it is something that I agree with, both from a personal experience, but it is something that's more and more sports are doing and putting in as an important part of their fan development journey. So that's it from this episode. Again, thank you very much to my guest, Dustin Lockett. I want to hear from you. I want to keep hearing from you. Thank you for the people who've sent through messages with the podcast relaunching. You can send me an email, Sean@sportsgeekhq.com, or you can send me a tweet at Sean Callanan if Twitter hangs around a little bit longer. Hopefully Elon Musk does not stuff it up too much. And please, if you've got someone that you think should be on the podcast that you want to hear from, it might be someone you look up to or someone you work to, please let me know. And also let me know what questions, what topics, what do you want me to tackle? What do you want me to talk about? I'd really appreciate it. That's it from me. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Need a speaker or MC at your conference or event? Contact Sean, sportsgeekhq.com/keynote. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. For more resources, go to sportsgeekhq.com.